Next, we have item 7B, which is to receive our all-department equity update, the latest status as of hot off the presses probably today. So I'll turn it over to Thomas Brooks, our diversity and inclusion manager, and look forward to that update.
And Mr. Mayor, I'll actually just have a brief introduction.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
All right.
I was trying to catch your.
Not a problem. We didn't coordinate ahead of time as to who's doing what, so I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants here.
No, that is perfectly fine. So just real briefly, as you can see in the packet, there's a lot of information in there, a lot of things that we're doing, which is great. We are not going to spend tonight going over every single item. I've asked each department head just to highlight a couple that are there. We'll go through that presentation, and certainly after the presentation, if there's a desire to go back and talk about something we didn't directly talk about, we're more than happy to do that. But we just want to highlight some of the accomplishments. Obviously, the report itself can stand by itself for the community, and we'll be sharing this information online as well. But we just want to have a very general touch on it and just talk about some of the highlights. So we'll try to get through it fairly quickly. We'll have the department heads shuffle up here as necessary, and then certainly have a discussion afterwards. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Brooks, our Equity and Inclusion Manager, to lead us off.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, it is always great to bring a new update to you. In lieu of keeping up with our quarterly-ish equity updates, this update is very similar to the one we did last June, which was really to mark the one-year anniversary of George Floyd's death, and really all of the work that accelerated because of that, not just in our city, but across the metro and across the state. And so this is very similar. Again, we will not go through all of the detail in the presentations. You are welcome for that. And we'll actually just kind of keep it high level. If you have any questions about any of the items, please let us know. But I just wanted to start out the same way that we do often, with just kind of a reminder of sort of what we're working on. So today, again, it's just an equity update. We have our SREAP, which we'll go to toward the end of this presentation, which is our strategic equity action plan. That is the work that we're trying to implement citywide in everything that we do. But in addition to all of that work, there are also a ton of day-to-day equity and inclusion initiatives that department heads and staff across the city have been working on. And so that is what you see a lot of throughout this presentation. And then as we get toward the end and get through all of the city stuff, we also should have some brief words from Culture Brokers, who has been with us the last 18 or so months. And is Lisa online?
She's online, yep.
Perfect. Okay. We do not have the presentation up.
Yeah, we're getting it in a second, so.
Okay. The racial equity narrative, I won't read that whole thing because I know we've seen it before many times, but just wanted to highlight the City of Roseville is dedicated to creating an inclusive community where the predictability of success is not based on race or ethnicity. So again, just a reminder that all of this work that we're doing, we are focused on outcomes and reducing disparities. That is the ultimate goal, and it's going to take a lot of hard work and persistence and creativity for us to get there, but just a reminder that we are focused on outcomes.
We do have the screen up now. I don't know if the presentation is on the computer.
No, not yet.
Pulled up?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
That's the issue.
Yes, sorry about that.
It's not so much an issue of having the technology work, it's actually having the
Have an
presentation.
actual file.
I got you. Okay.
Wires
Sorry
got
about
crossed there.
that.
So my apologies, it'll be up in a minute.
Right. Thank you for ad-libbing effectively there.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Brooks.
So the last thing that I just wanted to note, I know that we have been talking a lot about community aspirations, and we know that there's a lot of work ahead to make sure that we are on the right track with those aspirations, but all of our equity work directly ties back to those aspirations, particularly the very first one, which is a welcoming, inclusive, and respectful community. So the first up is actually going to be our police department. So very similar order to what we did last year. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Erika.
Great. Thank you. we continue to make this a priority within our police department, and there's a lot of information on the slides from the police department, so I'm just going to highlight a couple things that we've been doing. First thing I want to highlight is our community action team and the work that they've done this last year, especially the addition of 2 social workers and a housing navigator. That really has allowed us to be out in the community and working with our families and with individuals who may be struggling. So that definitely is something that we've made a priority, and that unit is fully staffed and keeping plenty busy. And both of our social workers are now on site at the police department and responding out in the community to calls. The second slide for the police department kind of talked about some of our policies and training. One policy that I'd like to highlight is our traffic policy. In September of 2021, we went through all of our policies to look at them from an equity lens. And one that we took a really close look at was our traffic stop policy. And what the change we made, which was already pretty much what we were doing, but we actually made it part of the policy, is that we wanted traffic stops to focus on public safety and on moving violations. And so absent a public safety issue, we do not stop for just minor equipment violations per our policy. And that was really based on what we heard from the community and from our MAC. We know our traffic report hopefully will be coming out in the next 2 weeks, and we know that the statistics show that the majority of traffic stops, about 80%, are for moving violations. And then on the third slide that we've got, I'll just highlight some of our recruiting and retention. We continue to focus on diversifying our workforce to have it more reflective of the community. So we're continuing a lot of the things we've already been doing, but also looking at creative ways through paid internships, through additional pathways to policing grants to bring new voices and new perspectives to the law enforcement career. And that is the 3 slides I think we have for the police department.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. We've had quite a year.
Should probably remind folks to introduce themselves for the benefit of the public. And that was Chief Scheider of the police department who just gave that presentation.
And I am Matt Johnson, the Assistant Director of Parks and Recreation. And with that, again, I thought for my, before the Academy Award music kind of plays me off to move on to the next person, I thought rather than maybe focus on the larger things that you may have already heard about, I'd touch on a few things we're doing to really operationalize the equity focus in our departments. So one example of this is that when we planned our summer recreation opportunities, we spread it all out on the table, and we decided we were going to kick off of this year with our Discover Your Parks series at Unity Park in southeast Roseville in the Brittany Marion neighborhood, and that's on June 22nd. And that was really an intentional decision for a couple of reasons. Number one, we thought that we can make some connection with the folks in that neighborhood and really talk about what parks and recreation opportunities go on throughout the rest of the summer and try to sort of engage and really make sure that those folks have an opportunity to participate. We also have a Rec Connect program, which is a free recreation program that we run in Unity Park. We have staff that go out there every week, twice a week, and make those connections again at no cost. And we thought that if we get out there and we do our Discover Your Parks, which is our bouncy castle and the puppet wagon and really the pop-up party in the park, we're going to draw those people to us at the very beginning of the summer and then have that opportunity to build on. So Unity Park is a logistically challenging place to do this. It's got a smaller footprint, no parking lot, but when we sat down and started hashing this all out, that was a very intentional decision to try to kind of move that needle, to engage with those folks first and hopefully in an ongoing way throughout the summer. So that was one way in which we're really trying to kind of operationalize. Another one that we're really working on, and by no means have we cracked the nut fully, but is our scholarship program. So we've had a scholarship program here in Roseville going back certainly before my time and probably throughout all of Lonnie's time. And what that is if you have financial need and you're a Roseville resident, you can have $100 towards any recreation program or service at any time throughout the year. We've had that for an ongoing time, but this year really made a concerted effort to be more frontal with the promotion and with the idea that financial barriers should never be a barrier to participating in our programs. So we've put ads for it within our brochure. We've created a website that references that, and then done some social media posts about our scholarship program. More so, we've really been intentional this year as we try to remove barriers. So in addition, it used to be you'd have to come in to apply for it. We now have an online application option. And we've also broadened so our entire recreation program spectrum, youth and adult, has the opportunity to apply scholarships towards. So people who have financial need and are Roseville residents would have the opportunity to apply for those scholarships. Now, as I said, we recognize that this is a step forward, and we've seen a pretty good increase in the amount of applicants through about the first quarter of the year. But we recognize there's a lot of work to do. So another thing that we're doing is we are actually tracking demographics of those who apply for the scholarship program, getting their contact information, and we plan to do a more thorough analysis at the end of the year to try to determine, is it meeting its need? Are we actually creating more opportunity, and what barriers exist, so that we can kind of continue to move forward next year as we look at ways to get, again, as many people from different backgrounds in Roseville in our programs as we can. So I'd love to talk to you more, but I think I've already overstayed my welcome. So thank you.
You're going to have to stay for one just quick question. In terms of the scholarship program, is there a lot of need to demonstrate the financial need through the application process, or is that fairly simple and not terribly invasive into people's privacy?
It's a wonderful question, Mayor Rowe, and we've had conscious conversations on it. At this point, we essentially take residents at their word. So they have to display their residency, which is usually a driver's license or something to that effect. But at this point, we do not make them, we have not requested anything that demonstrates.
We're not verifying income or anything.
Right, and that's because of the research indicates that can be quite a barrier for folks. So we've opted at this time to go forward without that.
Right. Thank you for clarifying that. And that was part of the reason of asking the question, was also so folks watching would know that that is how we approach it, and it's not something that we're asking people to give us a lot of personal information for.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'm Janice Gunlock. I'm the Community Development Director. As you know or have seen in the slides, a lot of the work that we are doing has an equity focus. The two items I selected to highlight for you this evening are broader sort of ordinance changes or major policy changes. The first one is the zoning code update. We spent a lot of last year working on the mandatory updates to the zoning code. We actually held 2 racial equity Zoom sessions or engagement sessions on this effort. And the feedback we received at those engagement sessions was exclusively related to housing options and affordability. And so this sort of coupled with some content in the 2040 Comprehensive Plan about a lack of missing middle housing, and missing middle housing is typically duplex, triplex, and quadruplex. So in the context of broader Roseville, 80% of our residentially zoned land is reserved or was reserved exclusively for single-family homes on lots that are 11,000 square feet. And we refer to this as our LDR zoning. And after much discussion about the feedback we received at the engagement sessions, the lack of missing middle housing in our comp plan, we advanced 2 efforts to the Planning Commission for consideration, and one was to introduce 2 family dwellings and courtyard cottages, also known as tiny homes, into our LDR district, and then also to reduce the minimum lot size requirement to 9,350 square feet, which is an area that is more consistent with our existing single-family homes. And this was not done lightly. We did a lot of research on density impacts to the community, and we determined that this change would really only result in 1 to 2% increase in density over a period of 15 years. So this is less than 170 units. The nice thing about the change is it would spread that density out equally throughout all of Roseville's residentially zoned land, which provides occupants of this housing to the amenities that you receive in living in all of our residential neighborhoods, as opposed to the more typical way of doing it, which is to center it in certain geographic areas within the community, typically in higher traffic areas or areas that have commercial industrial adjacency. We are just now seeing developers look at implementing missing middle housing into infill developments, but we haven't actually seen anything to date. I don't have anything to highlight on the second slide. We do have a lot of housing programs that we've been tweaking to address equity issues. The last item I wanted to highlight is on our third slide, and it relates to the tenant notification ordinance. The EDA did just have a conversation about this last week. Real quickly, 33% of Roseville's residents are renters. 40% of those are cost burden, which means they're spending more than 30% of their income on housing. and BIPOC households are much more likely to rent. For example, Black households rent at a 73% rate here in Roseville compared to white households, which are at 27%. Also, renters are 3 times more likely to experience housing instability, which means they found themselves in a situation where they need to find new housing within the last year. And so we are advancing a tenant notification ordinance to you. The purpose of this ordinance would to provide more notification to renters if their housing becomes unavailable to them for reasons that they did not have any control over. And it's mostly through a change in ownership. So a new owner comes in, changes the lease terms, and the new owner or the renter can't meet those new lease terms. The most common one is raise rent, but it can be something as simple as changing screening criteria. So we will be drafting a ordinance. You've actually already seen it. It's based on the Housing Justice Center's model ordinance. We'll be engaging with a variety of stakeholders this summer and bringing an ordinance forward for your consideration this fall. So those are the 2 items I wanted to highlight.
Very quickly, from the Public Works perspective, a lot of our equity focus has
And
been.
you are,
I'm Mark Culver, sorry. Mark Culver, Public Works Director. Thank you, Mayor. A lot of our focus on the equity side has been on the selection of projects, particularly our pathway projects. And this goes actually back to 2018 when we updated the Pathway Master Plan. And we actually looked to, in our preference scoring of the segments of the pathway, we actually introduced elements of scoring related to proximity to high-density developments, transit developments, things like that, connections to parks. A lot of those would actually serve some of our more diverse communities here in Roseville. And I think, that's really shown through in where we've actually constructed these pathways in the last few years. And with the help of community development, we've secured some pretty sizable CDBG grants for the construction of pathways that connects the area that our Parks and Rec, our new coming Parks and Rec Director, Mac Johnson, was discussing at Unity Park, and connecting that area actually to McCarran's Lake through a new development that occurred. And this year we'll be constructing a sidewalk along Marion to connect that area to Larpenteur, where we used previously CDBG funds along Larpenteur to create the sidewalk connection from Rice Street all the way to Dale. So we've really been targeting that area and making use of some grant funds from Ramsey County. But we've also been constructing smaller sidewalk segments along Dale Street and Lexington and other areas, connecting those high-density areas to transit and parks and other things. The other thing that I wanted to highlight today is work on, through our Partners in Energy program, one of the focus areas in that came out organically through the process. The Partners in Energy community or committee, subcommittee that was organized and worked to develop the focus areas for our energy action plan. One of those items was working with energy burdened homes and properties to help them connect them to resources like energy audits, but more importantly, loans and other funding sources to make improvements to their homes to reduce that energy burden. And so there's been a lot of effort to connect, to notify those homes based on lower incomes and other factors that Excel is able to highlight and dig into to find those properties and then get them the information, connect with them, and then try to get them to schedule some energy audits, free energy audits, and other programs for them to lower that energy burden on their properties. It's been extremely successful. We don't have necessarily the numbers as far as how many of the lower income properties are making use of that. We know that we're about halfway through our goal of connecting to 1,400 households. Not all of those, of course, are going to be those lower income homes or diverse homes, but we should be getting some more demographic data later this year on that, on which of those homes are taking use of the programs in that we're trying to connect them to. So that's Public Works. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. My name is David Brosnahan. I'm the fire chief. First off, thank you to the council members and to Pat for helping continuing to move this program forward. The fire department's found unique opportunities, and we're kind of just still scratching the surface because we're working with Thomas on some new things as well. So very excited about that. Also want to give some props here to Thomas. He's been an all-star. He's been fantastic getting us all going and with this program. So thank you, Thomas. So tonight, just a couple of quick items. Again, our advancement of ALS first response, the healthcare access in our community is significant. I think that is a better movement for all members of the community. Another big piece I want to quick hit on was our food partnership with Every Meal. This started out as just a very random, hey, can you put some food in your front entryway? In April of 2020, and we said, sure, yeah, let's give it a shot. To all of a sudden, it's now a permanent program where we will have permanent access to food there. And not only that, but Roseville Fire was actually a pilot program because now 12 other fire stations or fire departments around the metro now do the exact same thing as us. So it was a pretty cool program that we could be a part of with those folks to kind of make those connections to make impacts. Ms. Gunlock made some mention on rental housing. A big piece of our prevention side of things is the multifamily licensing program. And as she mentioned, I think that there's an opportunity for more advocacy, support, and education, and I think we can kind of fulfill that role within the fire department. So we're looking at some different programs, different initiatives within our multifamily licensing, and also possibly how we can expand it to make it better and improve the program for all that are renters in the community. Let's switch to the next one. My highlighted ones. One is the creation of a pathways program. So our firefighter cadet program. Essentially, it's creating that opportunity where one wasn't before. So it's the first of its kind for Roseville Fire, as well as one of the first in the metro area. Maplewood Fire and Brooklyn Park Fire are the only ones that I'm aware of that have a program like this. But essentially, it's the opportunity to have underrepresented and non-traditional to join our ranks. Throughout our hiring process over the last 5 years, 94% of our applicants have been white and 89% have been male. So we need to find other opportunities to find a diverse background to fit into our fire department and to bring into what is the best job on the planet. I may be biased. So we've been involved with different career fairs. We've been doing some different recruitment with flyers at Irondale, Moundsview, Roz, as well as Century College to kind of get the word out. And it's pretty exciting because about a year ago at this time, we had maybe kind of a loose job description for this program. And so we're finally, with the support of Pat and Michelle with budgeting and things, we've been able to get it out there. And next week, we start our application process to get this program kicked off and going. Also want to just make a quick note of the reinvigoration of our Fire Explorer post. We're starting a new process for our recruitment. And similar to what Mr. Johnson brought up with Parks and Rec, we have a scholarship program for those that want to be part of the Fire Explorer post. There are some costs associated with it through the Boy Scouts of America that the fire department will cover costs for folks that want to be part of this program. So we're getting that started up this summer, which is a pretty fun and exciting opportunity. If nothing else, for young people, it doesn't necessarily mean they have to get a job in the fire service. It's creating skills, it's building confidence, it's building relationships, just getting them ready to be an adult, but also do cool stuff that we do at the fire department. So it's a win-win for everybody. And the last piece I was going to just touch on is our community events. The public's trust is a sacred trust, and our fire department takes that very seriously. And so much of what we do really isn't in the emergency response, although we just went out the street right there for an emergency just a moment ago. So much of it is making connections in the communities. It's with our block parties, it's our open houses, it's our Fridays with firefighters, it's teaching people CPR or whatever it might be. That outreach is critical to people to make a difference, and I think that's truly what it's about. We're in such a unique position as the fire department because everybody kind of likes us, and that's a good thing. But we can go two different ways with that. You can either kind of take that as like a crutch, or to take it kind of for granted. Oh, don't worry about it. Everybody loves the fire department. Or you could use it as an opportunity to hold it up, to lift that weight up and continue that every day. And I think that we've had some struggles during COVID because we just haven't been able to do these types of things. And so now, post-COVID, getting an opportunity to get back into doing things like this, connecting with people, to let them know and see their fire department, see their firefighters in a non-emergent fashion is one of the most critical things that we can do to, I think, improve the enjoyment or the betterment of life in Roseville. So that is everything that I had. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Rebecca Olson, I'm the Assistant City Manager. So in the administration department, we do not do as many fun things as, say, the fire department. But what we have done the past several years is really focused on the organizational development surrounding equity. We serve in administration as kind of the hub of much of the equity and engagement work that's going on, being undertaken throughout the organization. And a lot of that is focused on building the infrastructure as well as the processes. Again, maybe not glamorous, maybe not fun, but they're really important. And so it's things such as the creation of our community relations team, making that shift from the traditional communications to shifting to community relations and building relationships within the community, focusing on engagement. The other pieces kind of that go along with that are we are working on creating opportunities to build staff capacity within the organization. We helped coordinate the 2-week-long trainings under the IAP2 model for about 16 of our staff. And then a lot of the work that's done through the Strategic Racial Equity Action Plan is housed within administration. So commission recruitment, developing the racial equity toolkit, and our workforce diversity. One area that I did want to just touch on is that workforce diversity. And we've been doing a lot of work on that. So you'll hear from a lot of the departments the focus on recruiting and focus on hiring. And each department does a wonderful job working within their own department. But then, we have the coordination with human resources that relies on some of that. What we're trying to do is shift into a data-driven equity process for a lot of the things that we're doing. And as you'll see on the consent agenda, there's a request for a couple different software systems that can help support that can help us not just collect the data, but also analyze the data so that our processes can be focused on equity. And, although we have a long way to go in our hiring processes, we are making some progress. Some of the numbers that we've run recently is since 2019, we've hired approximately 70 regular benefit eligible employees, so not seasonals, not temporaries, not interns. That, in the grand scheme of things, when you're looking at all of our employees, that's about a third, just under a third of our total employee base. Out of those 70 employees that we've hired since 2019, 25% of them identify as a person of color. The other thing that number doesn't tell you, however, is those employees who remain. So we're not just tracking the people that we hire, we're also tracking people that remain with our organization or leave our organization. So what that means for us today, in terms of our employees as of today, for our regular employees, is we have roughly 13.5% of our regular employees that identify as a person of color. So knowing that our goal is to be reflective of the demographics of the people that we serve, the 2020 census indicates that about 25% of our community identify as a person of color. So we have a ways to go on that. But I don't want to get too much into it because I believe that's going to lead into what Thomas is going to talk about with our Strategic Racial Equity Action Plan. But a lot of our focus is on those processes and procedures and things surrounding our hiring and workforce. So with that, I will let him take from here.
Yes, I believe Rebecca covered most of the workforce diversity work, which is kind of the first priority of the SREAP, which again is our Strategic Racial Equity Action Plan. We have really been focused on that data piece, even up until it seems like just a couple hours ago we were messing with the data to try and get some more accurate numbers. So constantly working to make sure that we have the right data. And we do have some processes that have been standardized that will allow us to sort of maintain that data and be able to do a year-by-year comparison. So that, I think that's one of the good things that's come out of sort of reevaluating our processes related to hiring over the last year. So continuing to, always looking at process, continuing to update job descriptions, as vacancies become available. And then again, just gathering data, and that's going to be a huge focus going into this next year. We also just finished, I think, the spring commission recruitment process, which I know you all were a part of. We have done an evaluation of that. We've sent out some surveys to gather a bit of information from those that participated. And so the work now is really just to standardize that and to continue that. And as we continue to come up with new ideas or continue to run into or see challenges, we can continue to work to address those. But as of right now, we're sort of in this phase where we're just kind of waiting to the fall and spring of next year to be able to duplicate, the effort that we put into this last round. And then the racial equity toolkit, I did include a draft of the racial equity toolkit in the packet. I was actually really excited to show you all because a lot of work and time went into that. And so I do not only want to thank all of the staff, department heads, strategy team, and just staff in general that had some sort of input or voice in that document. But also our community relations team really kind of took this project on and dug in for a couple of days to get it to where it is. So a lot of research went into just creating the content of the document. So we did look at other cities that also have racial equity toolkits. Most of them are much larger cities than we are. And so, this document that you have in front of you today, at least in its current state, is what we felt was best for our city, our capacity, our size, and just where we are in our equity journey. And not to mention, it's one of the nicest toolkits I've seen by far. So yeah, it is in a draft form. We'll continue to update it, I think, as more staff is able to see it and interact with it. As you're able to see it more and interact with it, we can continue to adjust some of the language and maybe make additions as we get a little bit further and deeper into this equity journey. But yeah, I'm excited that we have something to start with, and I know you saw it for the first time related to the tenant notification ordinance at the EDA meeting. So yeah, we have some ideas of some future projects that will start to apply that to. But the hope is to kind of slowly roll this out in more of a natural way than a kind of a forced structured approach, just to get staff more comfortable with it. I think one of the things that I am most excited about the toolkit is that, to me, it's just a formal document of what staff has already been doing. So it's really to get staff to pause and think about what we're doing, who's being impacted, why we're doing it, et cetera. And I can tell you that staff have already been doing that for quite some time. And whether it's discussions that happen internally in departments or whether it's sending me a phone call or an email, I know that it's happening on a daily basis. And this just allows us to be able to document that and share some of that knowledge and that thought with each of you. I think the one thing that I just want everyone to know as we start to see these documents come forward is that it really is just a tool for staff to pause and reflect. It's not a test of someone's competence in equity in any way. And it's very likely that as soon as that document is completed and it comes before you, that you'll probably instantly have some questions or some additions that you might add to it. Everyone in the community might have the same thing. And so we can always continue to add to it and learn from it. But just a moment in time, it's a tool to reflect and make sure that we are thinking about every single stakeholder within our community as we're going forward and making decisions. Before we get to questions or comments, I did also invite culture brokers. So Lisa is here today, who really started this equity journey with us before I came aboard. And culture brokers has completed their time with us. So I just want to first thank Lisa, Earl, and the Culture Brokers team for all of their work in getting us to this point. I think, I don't think we'd be where we are today if it weren't for their work, wisdom, and guidance. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Lisa now.
Can't hear you.
So we're at the close of Culture Brokers contract. I can't believe it. We started with you in November of 2020. It seems like a long time and also a very short time. You have achieved a lot, and I am grateful for the opportunity to reflect on the evolution of the work and your capacity to achieve equity outcomes since we started in 2020. So Roseville, when we started, Roseville had already had the strategic racial equity action plan. You had the bones, and it was clear that there had been a lot of thoughtful work. You'd started the journey with the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, which is a national leader in nurturing government agencies toward racial equity. So you started off on exactly the right foot, in my estimation. You engaged a variety of diverse community members to develop that strategic racial equity action plan. And they identified a few top priorities and indicators for improvement to diversity and inclusion for residents, staff, and leaders. So your key stakeholder groups were also covered. They identified outputs that were really important, such as communication, content, documents, and training, and they identified metrics related to those outputs. So they had a lot of the basis for how we would come in and help just improve the plan so that it was more actionable and, as you've heard before, could convert your vision into reality. So what we did was really add some more of the systems change effort towards those outcomes and making those activities more clearly connected to lasting, meaningful improvement. So now I see, I'm so thrilled at what I've been hearing. Roseville has this amazing capacity to operationalize equity throughout the city government, far beyond the 3 key improvements in the Strategic Racial Equity Action Plan, as you've heard, right? You have established a number of approaches in which there is great confidence on behalf of staff, especially, that through those approaches, you will improve equity. You have staff who now have a lot of discipline around several key areas that are required for improving equity, including strategy, which is really a focus on just a few meaningful improvements that you will achieve with excellence. And also I'm hearing that those conscious conversations, as Matt pointed out, are happening throughout the entire organization. You have this orientation on results. Results matter. They are the proof of your intention, and they demonstrate competence. And as I've been hearing, we've all heard, every single conversation that has happened in this space with these directors has been about results. You can only get to those results through measurement and knowledge management. And so you hear that there is data, that the decisions are data driven, that data is disaggregated by race and ethnicity and other meaningful differences, that information is being used to target improvements, and that you're installing these permanent systems to collect, analyze, and report that data. So you can constantly reflect on how your activities are happening and where you might need to adjust. There is that focus on operations and again, recognizing that the results are a manifestation of the processes. And so in order to change your results, you need to change your processes. And all of the folks who have been presenting here today are sharing those processes. They've explored them and they've realized where those changes need to be made in the processes to get better results. You are also involving everyone, which is completely necessary. You need to have input from your community and your staff at every level and across every department and function. You are leveraging your teams, your leadership, you're building capacity with those teams. You have this equity and inclusion manager position, which I think was one of the smartest things that you all ever did. And Thomas is just amazing. He's absolutely the right person for this. It's a permanent position, a wonderful investment. It has made a big difference in your ability, your capacity to work towards equity. Also, you have this wonderful strategy team now that has and is continuing even beyond the consultancy, and the integration between staff or city operations and the HRIEC is really powerful. I think it will just get better, and it is an opportunity to leverage the structure that you have related to the community with the city operations. Just lovely. I think that the next evolution for you, kind of thinking ahead towards what might need to continue to happen towards equity excellence, is to make sure that these new approaches and processes improvement work before you start doing more or other things. So it can be very exciting to start a new activity or to improve an activity, and it feels almost like that's the thing that you need to do, and you can then move on to another one. But of course it's not, right? You need to make sure that those things are working, and that is working based on disaggregated data disaggregated by race and ethnicity. And then institutionalizing that, what's working through policy. So Chief Scheider especially talked about things that they had been doing, but now we're putting into policy so that those activities are institutionalized if they're working. And then making sure that the new approaches and the processes that are working are happening consistently, and that they are being executed by all appropriate work units. So in summary, I think you've been doing wonderful. I'm so pleased, and I am. You just gone beyond what I have expected. You're a model. I've been referring people to Roseville for the last year. It's been such a pleasure to work with Rebecca and Thomas and the strategy team, and I just really appreciate your trust and over the last year and a half. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that's the extent of our presentation, but certainly be happy to answer any questions or receive any feedback. Thank you again, Lisa.
Thanks. Questions from the council for staff or the consultant, or feedback? No, I would just echo a lot of what's already been said. I think that, and this is something that came up in our discussions with the city manager in terms of his review, was how much we've been able to accomplish through the challenge of COVID and all of those difficulties in terms of connecting with people and engaging with people and all of that. I think it's really impressive that this organization was able to take all of this on and do as well as we did, given the challenges that we were also facing at the same exact time. So I think that's just testimony to everybody that's been involved and the job that they've done, whether it's staff, whether it's volunteers, whether it's our able consultant and people in the community. I think it's just been tremendous. And by no means is this the end of the process. This is just a chance to reflect on where we're at now and to look forward to where we go from here. So appreciate everybody's involvement to this point and everything that has been accomplished.
I just wanted to applaud you on the racial equity toolkit. It is indeed a really lovely tool, and I know we've been talking about it for a long time, and to see it in there and ready to go, it's a lot of pride to know that our city is on that edge, and I take I take credit for something that I had nothing to do with, but I thank you for your hard work, and it really feels good to be affiliated with that.
Right, any other questions or feedback?
Mayor,
Councilmember Bratton?
I would like to thank you all for your work. Lisa, you're still smiling. I remember the first time we met you. Yep, that right there. And all of the staff and other folks who aren't here from staff who've put in boatloads of time and changed things that were comfortable and fine for them. And you can see tremendous progress, concrete progress. And I would like to say I feel targeted by the comment that we need to institutionalize systemic changes, because I keep saying, hey, let's do this, let's do this. And Thomas has already been parodying your line saying, let's make sure we do this thing well. And I really appreciate that, actually. I don't really feel targeted, but I think it's fantastic that you're saying, hey, let's ensure that let's check our data, let's make sure this is part of our system before we jump to the next thing. So I appreciate that. I appreciate that wisdom in this process. So thank you.
Anything else?
Just one comment.
Councilmember
I
Burke?
really appreciated the part that said as lessons are learned and outcomes are achieved, the RET is a working document and should be updated. And I think that, to me, sums up this whole process. I mean, of course, we're really pleased with where we are, but as we learn new things from it, we will make changes to adjust to that. So, and thank you for your work, Lisa, and thank you, of course, Thomas. You do an excellent job always. So.
Right, and the only thing I did want to also add is that in conjunction or parallel to having this racial equity toolkit, we also have been developing and advancing and evolving a community engagement toolkit as well, and that's part of the training that Rebecca mentioned with IAP 2. And the two go hand in hand, and so I think that once again, that's something else that we're accomplishing and moving the ball forward on as an organization, despite all the challenges we have, and is going to serve us well going into the future, and will continue to evolve as well. So once again, just a good chance to check in where we're at and have some confidence in where we're going from here. If there's nothing else, I suppose we should open it up if there is anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this update on our strategic racial equity action plan and update this evening as to where the city's at. We'll open it up for public comment. All right, seeing nobody necessarily come forward, we'll thank everyone once again, and I believe that concludes this agenda item.